The following podcast is a W2M Network original production. Visit W2Mnet.com for all of our other great podcasts, plus news, reviews, articles, and opinions from the worlds of wrestling, video games, football, and entertainment.
Hello and welcome to another Soccer to the Max. As we are continuing our MLS Team Previews here, got 7 new teams to talk about. Well, not all new, but you know what I'm talking about here. And of course, we got some big news with maybe a coach returning to MLS, a player certainly returned to MLS, and NYCFC decided that they wanted to have the whole week to themselves as far as just grabbing players all at once, it felt like. And of course, we've got the MLS Team Kits are starting to all be unveiled. So we're going to choose our top 3 2017 MLS Kits. Unfortunately for Rachael, the Seattle Sounders apparently decided they want to make us wait even longer for their kits. So,
boo.
Yeah. So we'll get to that at the end of the show. Of course, I am your host, Sean Garmer, here with me. Already told you she was here. She already talked. Miss Rachael McKriger, how you doing?
I'm dandy.
And Mr. Erik Watkins.
Because we all know it's always better to be here than watching an all-star game. I mean, I'm being realistic here.
Well, yeah. You're certainly right about that. And the skills challenge was actually sort of interesting. Well, there you go. We got the S in there even. So, you know, there's a certain player that apparently, if you're a Seattle Sounders fan, Rachael, you're not supposed to really be happy that he is now with the Vancouver Whitecaps on a 1-year loan from Chinese Super League team, seeing as, you know, you guys are rivals and all. Being a Sounders fan, are you in that camp of hating this move, or are you sort of happy that he's back in MLS?
Fredy Montero. He was the heart and soul. Well, sort of. He was part of the heart and soul of the Seattle Sounders for a pretty good chunk of time. He was there from 2011 to 2014. Me personally, I'm not incredibly upset by the move, but I know a lot of other Sounders fans are. I see it as in the way of when he left, we got Clint Dempsey. I think that's a pretty... I'll take Dempsey over Fredy Montero any day. But either way, just going to your rival club, I mean, come on, man. There's plenty of other teams.
How do you feel about that, Erik? Would you be angry if a former player on, say, Orlando or DC went to the rival club and after being away for, almost 4 or 5 years from MLS?
It really depends on who it was. Back in the day, if just about anybody left DC United and went to, say, New England or Chicago, yeah, I would be really pissed off. But I guess it gives more incentive to, like, go out there and really hammer them come time for the season. It's just, like, shut them down, root for everybody that plays against them, and when it comes time, step up and beat them a few times.
So, I mean, as far as what he brings to Vancouver, a team that had about 4 different players try to play at forward, and they had a total of 10 goals. Fredy Montero, I think, from 2010 to 2012 had a goal to assist ratio that was only less than Thierry Henry during that time. So, I mean, the dude obviously scores goals. He spent time in Portugal. He spent time in, last year with the Chinese Super League. Obviously, the dude can bring it. I mean, but do you think he solves this problem for Vancouver now? Do you expect them to be banging in the goals now that Montero's there?
I think it'll certainly help. That's probably why they weren't as effective last year. A lot of the reason why they weren't effective as well was because of their defense too. But I think it'll help. I don't think it'll make such a drastic difference that, one person's going to change the whole club. I don't think that's how it's going to work. I don't think he has that, going back to Clint Dempsey, when he was gone for some of that season, there was a lot of confusion. They started losing games, and then, Jordan Morris picked up the slack for Seattle. But, I just don't think he is one person that can just, really affect it that way.
Well, and I'll get this kind of further into when we do our team previews, but having that boot always helps. Number one, it's going to make the Cascadia Cup that much more of an interesting kind of in-season tournament, but yes, even if he isn't doing all the work by himself, you need a legitimate scoring threat, and all things aside, Montero is arguably one of the best scoring threats out there that Vancouver could get. So I think it's a step in the right direction at the very least.
Yeah, certainly. You want to have guys that you can feel comfortable that when they go out there, okay, you can feel better about them being out there than, say, having to trot out 5 different guys and go, oh, okay, well, this guy wasn't working, so we got to switch this up. Knowing what lineup you're going to have out there, other than obviously having to do rotation if you're in some other kind, whether it's U.S. Open Cup or some other kind of competition, makes you feel much better as a coach if you're Vancouver than, all right, well, let's see if Los Perez is going to do something today. Let's see if, Hurtado is going to do something today. Let's play these guys in a position that kind of fits them better. And plus, you got Jordi Reyna you brought in. He can play underneath Montero, and it's going to work better, I think, for Vancouver. But staying with the Seattle sort of theme, Clint Dempsey says he's been getting some minutes in games in preseason, 30 minutes, 45 minutes. He's back to about 90%. So you feel confident, Rachael, that when it hits, March, we're going to be seeing Mr. Dempsey?
I would think so. I think it's a big maybe, but I'm leaning towards yes, because Brian Schmetzer said he doesn't want to play Dempsey unless he is medically cleared. Dempsey has been medically cleared. Now, I don't know what that means for him with the national team. I think Bruce Arena is going to be a little less willing to play him because he does have a giant pool of players. He has Jossie Zardes, he has Chris Wondolowski, Aaron Johansson. You could even put Christian Pulisic up there, Jordan Morris. The list goes on and on and on. But I think Seattle, I could see him coming on as a substitute in the first game. I don't really quite see him start, but I don't think it'll take long to see Mr. Dempsey starting.
What do you think, Erik? We see him?
I think so, and I'm along with similar guidelines as Rachael. Come out on a sub. I would probably say maybe a halftime substitution if he's at the point to where he's getting 45 minutes. And I'd say by end of March, first match in April, yeah, I think that's when he's finally back into a starting role. It's always good for a player of Dempsey's caliber that you can ease him in the first matches of the season, especially because Bob Bradley's like, okay, I'm going to take a step back. No need to rush to see him in MLS to give him a shot at playing nationally. So it's a pretty favorable timetable all around. But halftime sub, and by 2-3 matches in, now he's in your starting 11.
Yeah, always better to bring them, kind of ease them in, because preseason, much different deal than playing, in the regular season where all these games start mattering and everything. So I would have to go with you guys. You either put him at halftime sub, 60-minute sub, whatever you want to do there, and let him kind of ease it in for everything. So I think we're going to stop there on the news for a minute and go into do a round of MLS team previews. Erik, whichever team you want to start on here, give it a go.
Well, the first one, I teased New England. And looking at a team, normally you have a lot of teams in MLS, they try to be active on some sort of level, trying to bring in players, trying to improve, loan out, or just let everybody kick everybody out the door who isn't working. But for New England, they were just outside of the draft, very scarily quiet. Now, you've had some local news outlets blast Robert Kraft and the ownership for caring about the Patriots, not caring whatsoever about the Revolution. So this kind of thing is really keeping up with that trend and going to, even though this was 3 years ago, adding fuel to the fire. But this is a team that loves to make changes mid-season, so I'm not giving a lot of credence to that. What I really liked about them, especially offensively, Lee Nguyen. I mean, midfield, attacking mid, 10 assists. That's tremendous, especially when you have 5 guys scored at least 5 times. Very good potential. You've got mixing guys like Kellen Rowe, Diego Fagundes. You've got a very potent offense. But the problem, not so much defense at times. This is a team that, if you put them in a cup situation, if you put them in a preseason tournament, they'll be fantastic. Look at how well they did last year in the U.S. Open Cup. But when it comes to league play, you start off winless your first 3 matches. Then you win. Then you don't win for another 6 matches. And then you get times, especially later in the season, August and first part of September, 380 minutes without scoring a goal. That's a problem. You have a lot of good attacking mids. You have good forwards. But what's going on when you get to a certain point to where things are in your head? Can you get maybe a holding midfielder or 2 to help keep teams off the scoreboard if this happens? Can you get more consistent scoring out of your offense? That's what the Revolution can do. Granted, they were right on the bubble. They missed out on the playoffs thanks to a tiebreaker, having a poor goal difference. But if they can lock down the defense just a teeny bit, go along with more fluidity and more consistency on offense, they could sneak in. Otherwise, it could be a year where they slip farther back towards the cellar.
Do you see it being a problem with him having too much in the midfield to sit there and go, well, what happens if I leave Lee Nguyen on the bench for this game and not starting? What happens if, Kellen Rowe, who was the guy playing your attacking mid when they were playing the best last year, do I play him instead? Kouassi's coming back. Do I sit him in defensive midfield or not? Is Kai Kamara and Agudelo going to be able to work together all the time up front? I mean, it seems like a lot of questions for Jay Heaps. You think he finally settles on something this year and says, okay, I'm just going to go with this, and somebody's going to have to deal with being the 6th man?
It's going to take a while because it is something of an embarrassment of riches, but you have to get to the point to where, yes, preseason, first couple of matches, you want to get something that works, so that way you don't have to tinker. But at the same time, if you are in situations where you go 2-3 matches, draw, loss, along that line, you have to say, okay, maybe it is time to try something else, and then be able to stick with trying something new. So if he can really look at it and say 5 matches at a time, then yes, I think he can find something.
So, are you saying they make the playoffs then this year?
I'm going to lean towards no. This is going to be another bubble season, but I don't know if it's going to come down to a tiebreaker again. They would probably sink back farther, but I see them being closer to 8th or 9th in the East instead of 6th. Something about that, I don't know if it necessarily won't be all on Heaps. It could be something at the top, but this isn't an organization that really clicks right now.
All right, fair enough. Rachel, which one do you want to start with here?
I will start with the LA Galaxy. Galaxy fans, by the way, sorry that my Sounders beat you. I mean, sorry, not sorry. But the Sounders, the Galaxy, the Galaxy lost a very key member of their team this offseason. Not really quite a player, but a coach. They lost Bruce Arena, and Bruce Arena went, obviously, as we all know, to the United States men's national team. Bruce coached there for 6-7 seasons, I believe, ever since he was done with the U.S. men's national team during his first go-around. Then he went to the Galaxy. Meanwhile, I know I'm going to pronounce his last name wrong, Kurt Onalfo, he will be taking over. He coached the LA Galaxy too, which did very well in the USL in coming seasons. But they got, I'm sorry, hang on a second. I think I'm reading it wrong.
What? Are you talking about?
Yeah, I read a name wrong. I was under the Houston tab. I'm looking on the MLS's website, and I was under Houston's tab, not under the Galaxy's tab. Major malfunction. But as for the Galaxy, they got a couple key players. They got Jermaine Jones from the Colorado Rapids. There were reports that they were going to get Joe Corona, who plays on the U.S. men's national team. That hasn't happened, but there's still, the possibility. There's also rumors swirling that Jonathan Dos Santos could be coming there, and he would be joined by his brother, Gio. Meanwhile, they also signed a Portuguese player, João Pedro, who's very promising on their national team. But they re-signed Gel Van Dam, one of their defenders, but they did trade one of their defenders to the Houston Dynamo. They traded AJ De La Garza. They also lost Mike McGee. He announced his retirement from soccer early during the offseason. I believe it was in December it was January 4th that he announced his retirement. They also lost Robbie Keane in the free agency. And they also lost the possibility of signing Frank Lampard because they offered him a couple contracts, but he just, decided to go back to New York City FC. I don't really know what's going to happen with the Galaxy since Bruce isn't in charge. Bruce took that team to the playoffs and helped them win MLS championships like so many times. They won 3 championships under him. And now that he's gone and now that this new guy's coming in, he's inheriting, though, a lot of really talented players. With all of those players that were just named, he still also has like Jossie Zardes and Sebastian Leggett. And obviously Sebastian Leggett just showed his promise on the U.S. men's national team. I can see them making the playoffs. I don't know where they would stand in the playoffs, though. I think they're a team that might go out the same way that they went out this year. I don't see them making it to the Western Conference Final at all.
Fair enough. I mean, that is hard to have a new coach come in and immediately just equal out success. I mean, we've seen it happen before, but there's usually some growing pains that come with having a new manager in there. But, I mean, with this talent and this league, you should still be – I mean, not making the playoffs I still think is a big problem, unless you just have a rash of injuries, which is always possible for that to happen. Interesting if Gio's brother comes in, because when they played at Barca, obviously, both of them much, much younger, so they weren't really in a shape to where they could both play together very often. So it'd be interesting to see if they would actually get to play together at all if they were both on the Galaxy.
That would not be a team that I would want my Sounders to face if they were to play together.
So I'm going to go with the other Texas team here with the Houston Dynamo. They are once again kind of backed up by the stalwarts that they've had for quite a while, and Brad Davis and Ricardo Clark, who, you know, both getting into their mid-30s at this point, but still going, and Clark says he'll even probably stick around for the option that he has next year. I mean, obviously, depending if he plays around, and DeMarcus Beasley gets re-signed as well, so playing that left back, and heck, for having converted there not too long ago, still plays it rather well, you know, for his being 34 at this point. They've kind of gone younger with a more kind of Latin American influence. Not a lot of big moves coming out in the offseason either. They kind of decided, okay, we're going to go with what we got, coming in and bringing in a Vicente Sanchez, who I thought didn't do that much for Colorado last year. So perhaps maybe with the bigger Latin American influence here in Houston, he has a better fit. I think the biggest thing for Houston is going to be, can they get the goals this season? Because I think, as I noted last week, they were second lowest in scoring goals last year. And let's be honest, how you win, you got to score some goals. So, and the biggest problem for them is Erik Torres, who, lucky for them, Cruz Azul decided they didn't want to go pick him up. But the problem is, the reason why they haven't gone to pick him up is because Torres has been hurt all the time. So if he can come back and finally be the guy that we thought, oh, look at this great run he had with Chivas USA when they were still around, and then if he can come in and score some goals for Houston with Manotas up there, with why can't I think of his name right this second? With Wenger, if they can kind of come together with Boniek Garcia and be able to kind of be formidable up front and not so much have to rely on the defensive side of things, they can go much farther. I just don't know if this combination of everything is going to go so well with them. I think they won't be last this year. That's certain one thing. I do think still you're going to miss the playoffs, so I don't know if this total combination is going to work well. I think bringing in AJ De La Garza to that defense is going to help them. I just wonder about, do you have enough goalkeeper-wise? Do you have enough still up front? My hope for them is that you're not dead last. I'll go ahead and say, Eric, you got the odd number of teams for this podcast, so go ahead and who you're going to choose for your second team to cover here.
Well, you actually set me up well, because you had mentioned the second worst scoring team. I'm going to say about the worst scoring team in San Jose. Yes, it was the Chris Wojnarowski's show. He scored 12 times. Fantastic. But the rest of your team scored 17. That's a major problem. I think they took a rather significant step in signing Olmes Garcia, who, Colombian, good size, tall as 6 foot, had a decent run with Real Salt Lake, but they decided after loaning him out to their lower side, Real Monarchs, they just got rid of him. San Jose, they know they needed help. They got rid of all the rest of their forwards simply because they weren't producing, which was smart. So that's going to be huge, huge plus. And to their credit, and I made sure of this in my notes, their defense was an iron fortress. Last year in MLS, conceding 40 goals. Little over 1 a game. That's insane. Showing pretty hard to score on. And in 4 preseason matches here in 2017, they've only let in 1. Huge nut to crack if you're any opposing offense. Now, if they can solidify their counterattack, find another target, hoping Garcia works out, creating a good combination, this is a team that could be dangerous. Now, on the other side, because great defense, terrible offense, what usually happens? You end in a draw. They were the princes of draws last season. They had 14, tied with Orlando. The Galaxy actually had the most at 16 last season. If they can have some of those 1-point matches turn into 3, that would lead to tremendous strides. Overall, though, because of that vulnerability and because Garcia is still something of a question mark, I think that the best they could possibly do is 7th. Painfully close, edging up against that red line, beating against it, but not getting in.
Fair enough. So, Erik, since you were talking, you talked, I think it was either last week or the week before, about how, you weren't too happy about DC deciding that they were officially done with RFK and they're going to be going into this new stadium, officially now going to be called Audi Field, and they're going to have a groundbreaking ceremony on February 27th to start vertical construction on the field that's going to open in 2018, seating 20,000 people. You got to be excited at getting a new stadium. I know RFK is legendary and all that, but I mean, it is kind of cool to be one of those teams that's saying, oh man, I'm getting a new stadium. Come look at this, how pretty it is.
Okay, first of all, no, I'm not happy. You know my stance on legendary stadiums. I mean, there's that. But I'm willing to concede, and even the great late Lamar Hunt said himself, the idea for MLS and growing and being more of a league on the world map is more construction of soccer-specific stadia. I get that. And Audi creeping in with the sponsorship in MLS as they've done over the last couple of years, the fact that you have them to have naming rights, okay, I can get used to this. I'm not going to like it, but I'm going to understand for the purpose of the greater good. I've seen some of the renderings. I like the layout, especially where it is, the part of DC it is, which they, for the longest time, were nicknamed Buzzer Point. But overall, I really think that it can work. I can concede. Unwillingly, but concede. And I really think that it'll be a good thing, bring a bit more of the festive atmosphere. Plus, they're staying in the district. That's the big saving grace. They're staying in the district, right near where the Nationals play. Create a nice little sports complex on the edge of town. Okay. I
mean, Rachael, so, the Sounders have the same thing where they're sharing the CenturyLink with the Seahawks. Not as a legendary stadium as RFK, but wouldn't you be happy if they, all of a sudden Seattle announces, hey, This has been great, Seahawks. It's been great to have this big stadium that we've pretty much sold out every damn game. We want to have our own thing. Are you kind of with Erik, or are you kind of the whole, I want the shiny new stadium?
I would stay with CenturyLink. I think, or just stay with the stadium because, you're already there. Why go somewhere else? And honestly, I think if you're partnered, then honestly, I don't think it should really make a difference. That's a big name, the Seahawks. And I think even having that, the Seahawks will always tweet and stuff, when something the Sounders are doing is going on, just to promote, hey, they're in our stadium too. I think it's a win-win, honestly.
What about the whole, we want to get off turf and have grass and all that kind of stuff,
I would leave that up to the players for what they're most comfortable with.
It seems like players are kind of it used to be this big thing about, you don't want to play on turf, all these stadiums that you're using it for. I'm just more happy about you don't have the football lines as much as you, more than the turf deal. Is it nice that everybody has their own cool soccer-specific stadium that's grass and seats 20,000 people? Yeah, not everybody can do it, though. And, honestly, I wish the FC Dallas would have picked somewhere else. Frisco's an up-and-coming place or whatever, but they still picked, why would you do it all the way in Frisco that's far from Dallas, where you don't have the inner city and the Latin American influence and all that stuff, I hate that.
Well, I'll give it 2 points. Number one, look at what they've been able to do with Frisco and other events they've been able to host. And at the same side of that coin, amongst all the suburbs in the Metroplex, you would know this much better than I would, what would be better. Before you answer that, why would the Sounders leave CenturyLink Field? It's still one of the shinier, newer stadiums, and look how it was constructed. Hell, if RFK were built like that, the Redskins would have never left.
I wonder how much it would have cost them to do a repair job instead of just going over to FedEx Field like they did, though.
Well, that was a whole big thing about ownership. Yeah, Jack Kent Cooke, don't get me started. That name still holds some deep wounds throughout multiple generations of my family, so yeah.
All right, we'll leave that one there.
Trust me, I'll explain that to you one day, but not today.
So let's stay on sort of that side of the coast there, as NYCFC decided that they were going to just go grab a bunch of players all in 1 week. Of course, they're partnered with Man City from the Premier League, so they were able to haul in on loan a Venezuelan international, Yangel Herrera, who I've seen play various times. He is an up-and-coming defensive mid. He plays really well. Rodney Wallace, an MLS veteran, coming back. John Sturzer, another MLS veteran. And, of course, the big signing, Maxi Morales, to play the number 10 role, and a lot of talk about Maxi Morales can be the NYCFC's equal to Giovinco. So, having David Villa, having Andrea Pirlo, and, of course, everything else you got over there, is this that piece that NYCFC is missing now? He's now going to solidify everything, and we're going to see NYCFC doing crazy stuff.
I'm sorry, is this NYCFC or is this the Cosmos of the late 70s? Jesus. I love the appreciation of where you're getting a lot of players on defense, but are you really going to go down that road and try to hog in as many big names for yourself as you can? Come on.
What What do you think, Rachel?
Yeah, I'm with Erik. Like, it honestly, it's like we're in the Premier League, honestly.
I mean, if they can gel together, because that's the problem, right? Like, you can bring in all these great players and go, okay, all of you guys, talent is going to mean that you play beautifully on the field. Well, that doesn't always work. And you got to see how this melds. Who's on the right spot? Can they all be on the field at the same time together? Yeah, they all play different spots, so they probably could. I mean, I think he'll do fine, and I think NYCFC is going to be better for having Maxi Morales. And I don't sleep on Rodney Wallace. He's been very good in DC, and he got even better in Portland before he went on to play in other places. Just this is getting kind of crazy with NYCFC. Like, they decided they wanted to make a whole week of them signing players. This is and I don't think they're done yet. I think they're going to keep going until at least the season starts. So who knows with them? I think they were talking about another possible guy coming from Man City to play for them too. So we'll see how that goes for NYCFC. Before we move on to talking about MLS previews again, talking about another FC, LAFC, Bob Bradley, he's looking for a coaching job. He's talking with LAFC to coach them when they come into the season next year. Say they get Chicharito, what a 1-2 punch. Bob Bradley, Chicharito is your first two big moves.
What if Michael Bradley goes to LAFC then?
That would just be wrong.
Nepotism again.
I mean, even aside from nepotism, you've got top-class defender, you got a great striker, Chicharito, and a guy, and I'm kind of wondering about this. Are they getting Bob Bradley because of what he's done his entire body of work as a coach? Yes, and I even have to throw in Swansea, even though it's something that you don't necessarily talk about, but it's there. Or are they getting him because they're LA, they've got a star-studded ownership group, and they're just trying to get big names wherever they can? I feel like this could work, but I want to know their motives behind it and what their expectations would be.
I mean, yeah, I think obviously you're getting Bob Bradley, the name here. Let's not throw that around like it means nothing here, because saying Bob Bradley's your coach still means a lot to U.S. fans.
Oh, absolutely.
He brings a certain cachet of we know what he did, and what he did in MLS. The dude, did very well in his stead in MLS. To then go on and be the national team coach and do all that too. So coming back to something he knows well is not. That is pretty much like every other U.S. guy. Now Aaron Johansson's being looked at as well. If we're going to bring in another U.S. National team player that might come back to MLS, it seems like every person that might have had or does have any kind of connection to the U.S. national team is sort of coming back to MLS. So it kind of seems appropriate at this point. Rachel, what do you think? I mean, obviously what Erik said about what we're getting here, but is this a good fit for Bob Bradley to come back to a new expansion team and say, okay, I'm going to start my time of coaching here again?
I don't think it's a bad thing. I think Bob Bradley, I hate the fact that people now see him as Bob Bradley, the guy who got outed by, his Premier League team. That's not fair. He's done so much for not just coaching-wise, but for the sport, that it's just not fair. I think going to LAFC would be a great idea. Have him get back into it. Then it'll be Bob Bradley, the LAFC head coach, the guy who is who is bringing up this new team all by himself. Well, not all by himself, but you know what I mean.
I mean, do you see a lot of guys kind of, okay, Bob Bradley's the coach now. Could he bring in other U.S. national team guys?
I think he could. I don't know how many he can get, though. You know, there's all this talk about, you know, a lot of these players from Europe want to come. Like, there was that article, I remember the Washington Post was like, Fabian Johnson will be going to Atlanta United. No, he said he doesn't want to leave Germany. He's probably not going to be going to Atlanta United. But there are some other players that maybe aren't getting their minutes in Europe. Look at Aaron Johansson. He plays for Werder Bremen. He's not getting as many minutes as I personally think he should be. Julian Green, he went to Stuttgart. You know, even there, he's not getting his minutes. People that aren't getting their minutes, I think they'll look and they'll see Bob Bradley as the head coach, and they'll be attracted to come to the MLS.
What do you think, Erik?
Well, and I honestly think that would be a plus, and that would really be kind of a wink and a nod to Bruce Arena. Somehow it always circles back to him and all the hubbub with him coming back and being the coach of the national team, but it would be, I don't want to say star-studded or a big splash, but I think that would help a lot because you are creating that level of familiarity. And especially if I'm Bob Bradley, and I do wind up agreeing to this, I don't take any other coaching position in between. You had a terrible run at Swansea City, not exactly your fault, but you're coming back to familiar shores, all of your accomplishments. Take time, clear your head, let the powers that be assemble the team, then you come back at it with a fresh set of eyes, and then that could, down the road, mid-season 18, late transfer windows, and going on to 2019 and forward, bring those players that aren't seeing those minutes in Europe over to MLS, and then all of a sudden you're more competitive, and then all of a sudden you're back. You're nearing the top of the heap. So this could be beneficial in a lot of ways, but there's a lot of moving parts that I want to see happen first.
I agree with you that he shouldn't coach anywhere else. I think that's his point of negotiating right now because he wants to have this locked in so that they can start looking at players and start looking at what's feasible, who could they get to come over. I don't necessarily agree that you're sitting there waiting until the mid-season transfer window or whatever. You're trying to, install him so that you've already got a list of guys that you want to try to go after. And you go, okay, who can we sign? I'm ready for the super draft. I'm ready for everything else. And then in the offseason, you're getting together with these players, getting them in there early to train and everything else. And I think they want to compete from, just like Atlanta, you want to compete from the word go, from the first season. You want to be out there and making a name because you're competing with the other LA. And you're always going to be seen as that second team unless you come out there. Yeah, if you don't want to be the little brother, you got to be out there and just that first game you're playing the Galaxy. All right, this is a team you don't want to mess with.
Oh, absolutely. And I'm not saying they're going to wait until the midseason window. No. The ownership group, they looked like they were taking a very smart approach, and they are going to get these players, but I'm saying not only are you getting these players, but as things develop, especially during those first couple of months of that inaugural season, especially if you hopefully get a prime scheduling spot for the new LA Derby out of the way, then you would have a lot of players in that midseason transfer window, and then going forward, at least the next year, 2 years down the line, etc., say, hey, this could be a prime opportunity for me to come back. Look at what Bradley's doing. Look at the guys that are here. I want to get into that mix if I can. So that's more what I was leaning towards, but you're absolutely right.
Any kind of closing thoughts on the Bob Bradley possibility before we move on to talk about MLS Team Previews again here? All right, so silence is golden on that front. So, talking about your final MLS team here, Erik, for this week, who you got?
Oh, Montreal. You lovely francophones north of the border, in a city, for what I've heard, that's a lot of beautiful women, and prime for me if I ever get up there to get into a lot of shenanigans. But that's for another podcast. For this, we all know how their season ended against Toronto. All the talk of Didier Drogba, who's gone, saying after this I'm going to be out of here, that followed through. But when you look at a 7-5 playoff aggregate, you know something's up. I think one of the biggest things they did to address that, signing Chris Duval from the Red Bulls. Let's face it, their back four, shaky ground, closing the season, and then against TFC, they collapsed. Duval at right back at least reduces some of the vulnerabilities. At the same time, I mentioned Drogba's gone. Yeah, the season, as dealing with him from that perspective, getting a little pouty, doing whatever, taking himself off the team list because he wasn't starting. But at the same time, having a veteran presence helps, especially when you're playing or trying to get to MLS Cup. They can have someone, because they've been through those troubles, to try to improve, but losing him, losing Mario Williams, which could have been groomed as a replacement, that doesn't necessarily help matters. But for all the issues with the midfield, with the back four, not really holding anybody, not really avoiding giving up goals in bunches, they still have Ignacio Piatti in, my God, arguably one of the best attacking midfielders in the league. Definitely someone you can build around, drawing defenders. If they can find some extra support for him so that way he doesn't have to score 17 goals again, that would be perfect. From where they stand, they can get back to the playoffs. They can. Are they going to be at a point to where they'll avoid the knockout round? No. Possible, but no. I think they could potentially get back to the conference finals, but that might be a bit of a stretch. That's where I see them really topping out, going back to the conference finals.
Oh, so it looks like Montreal fans can expect another really good year for the Impact as they look to try to run everybody off the pitch again, scoring plenty of goals. A team that maybe wasn't the dead worst, but still had issues scoring, at least from anybody that wasn't David Accam and Michael Deleu for the Chicago Fire. They put in 16 of their 40 goals, which, not bad for your forward tandem there. I think what's going to help them a lot is you added the midfield duo. Can they work together is going to be the issue, but adding the midfield duo of Dax McCarty, who he's going to be able to control the game, boss that midfield from, behind, closer to the defense, and then you get Juninho coming out of retirement. Is it going to be the same Juninho? Let's see about that. But if those two can work in tandem, you get it up there to your scorers. Chicago certainly probably not going to be last in the conference this year, I think. And bringing in And when you're last in the conference, I don't know if there's anybody you're really losing, so I don't think that anything that they lost there they're going to worry about. I think when you're looking at this year, bringing in Solniak from player we've seen before, and bringing in Nikolic from Serbia, who he really hasn't played for anybody outside of Serbia. That's the only kind of knock on him right now is, well, if he was this great goal scorer, we would have seen him play for some, more major name teams. But hey, sometimes you get those diamonds in the rough that nobody really notices, and then they come in MLS and they score in bunches because you're really not totally sitting there dead-eyed looking at him. I think their biggest thing is losing Sean Johnson here. He's such a reliable guy. You're going to lose him. I think they lost their backup goalkeeper as well, so you're bringing in a Jorge Rodrigo Vava from Uruguay. Is he going to provide that same calmness and everything else and to your back line? I think that's my biggest question for Chicago is your goalkeeper going to be able to help you with the shutouts and everything else? And is their back line going to be something to rely on too? You got it going forward. Are you going to be able to keep the goals out? Is that the problem for Chicago? I think I kind of what Erik said for San Jose. I think they do better this year. Maybe that 7th or 8th spot. I don't think they're going to be last, but I still have them, I think, missing the playoffs here for Chicago. And Rachael, what you got here?
Philadelphia Union. You'd think living in Pittsburgh I would be a Philly fan just because they're in state, but Sounders stole my heart. But the Philadelphia Union, they have a really, really, really strong piece of the puzzle in Andre Blake. Andre Blake has been playing for the Union since 2014, and last season he started every single match that he could, at least, with the Union. He had 6 shutouts, which isn't the best, but hey, it's good. And he recorded 99 saves. He's a starter for the Jamaican men's national team. He's just an all-around strong goalkeeper. Roland Alberg, he was a rookie last year for the Union. He started 13 out of 28 games and he scored 9 goals. It seemed that every MLS recap I had to do, his name always came up. And the Union, they got a really good piece to the puzzle in the summer transfer by getting Alejandro Bedoya from Nantes. He is a U.S. men's national team player. He's a very common name on the U.S. men's national team. He had a lot of success over in Europe with FC Nantes in France, and now he's coming back to the MLS. Not back. This was his first year in the MLS. In the 10 games that he was able to play, he started all 10 of them. He only had 1 goal, didn't provide any assists, but then again, he came in the summer. How well are you going to fit into the system with that short period of time? They have a really strong team, and I think that they can be pretty tough to beat. They have Maurice Edu, they got Fafa Picault, and they got a former U.S. men's center back. Oh my gosh, Erik, I'm gonna need your assistance. You and I
Onyewu.
Yep.
We were just talking about him the other day, and I know I'm gonna butcher it, so I didn't even try. So they got him too to help bolster up their defense, and that was the problem last year, was the defense. It wasn't necessarily Andre Blake in goal; it was his defenders, specifically his center backs. So that's really gonna help them. They also re-signed Charlie Davis. He wasn't a flashy player, but he was a consistent player for them last season. And in the MLS Super Draft, they got a midfielder named Marcus Epps, and they just signed him to his contract, and they just signed Adam Najum from the New York Red Bulls in a trade.
Yeah, so lots to look forward to here for the Union as far as your returning players, some interesting new players and how they can all kind of combine together to maybe do a much better job of playing on the field for the Union. Where do you think they wind up? Just an early thought here.
I think they'll end up right where they were last year. They were in the 6th spot. I think that would be a good spot for them. They are loaded with talent, honestly. And I think if they just put their players in the right position, and now with having Alejandro Bedoya for like a preseason and such, get the chemistry going, I think they'll be pretty tough to beat.
Well, there you have it for our MLS Team Previews this week. We'll be doing, of course, 7 more next week. And, of course, we'll have to figure out some other day to do a show so we can finish that and have a big season preview on the final day here. So, finishing out things, John Harkes was let go from FC Cincinnati because he had a power struggle going on with the general manager, Jeff Birding, and with Cincinnati being one of those 12 teams that's looking for MLS approval, do you think that this kind of does anything for MLS looking at that and saying, I'm a little worried about Cincinnati here? Or do you just say, okay, you kind of have these internal things sometimes and they'll figure it out? I mean, still had some of the best attendance in USL last year. And then the New York Red Bull let go of Ali Curtis, and the Red Bull have been fantastic with Curtis as a GM. And after you hear about, Dax McCarty was barking at the fact that he couldn't stand Jesse Marsch letting him go the way he did to Chicago, that apparently Curtis didn't like that move either. And the team is sort of having these different thoughts about what to do with the Red Bull going forward. They almost had Jesse Marsch go coach the Austrian team even. It seems kind of weird from this ownership group and everything else to let a guy go where you've been successful. And same thing with Cincinnati. They were successful with John Harkes there. What do you think?
This is going to cost both teams. Now, as you said, every team has their internal struggles, but with John Harkes, letting him go just out of the blue, if I'm Don Garber and if I'm on that committee that's going to look at expansion, I'm going to ask some questions, attendance-wise or no, because that's showing that somebody really isn't necessarily stable. And if you have that level of success, they finished 3rd in the USL last year, which the USL has 30 teams. 30. If you're finishing 3rd, you're doing something right. So, I don't know necessarily what's up. And as far as with Red Bulls, well, this explains why NYCFC is like, hey, let's go and sign a bunch of these players. We have an opportunity to pounce and take over New York and that whole kind of tri-state immediate area for ourselves. We got to take advantage of this. So somebody doesn't have their heads on straight, and this could be big.
What do you think, Rachael?
FC Cincinnati, I've seen them a lot because of the Riverhounds. They play them 3 times a year. They have a very, very high expectancy from their team. They want to win. They have to win. And a lot of that is because of the very rapid fan base that they got. So that's probably why he went out. As for the New York Red Bulls, I agree with everything Erik said. This is really going to cost them. If you can't work out your differences for the better of the team, then you shouldn't be in this line of work. You have to put your personal business aside, and you got to focus on what's best for the team.
Yeah, I do wonder sometimes when you have ownership groups that have so much stuff going on, like the Red Bull ownership group does, and you got vested interest in different teams, how much can you really focus on what's happening, say in New York, what's happening in the Austrian team, and whatever else Red Bull's got going on as a company. And you sit there and you look and you go, okay, Ali Curtis is, when he came in, there was a lot of not great thoughts on him, but he turned that around and made that team better. He was the one that decided to get rid of Pecky and put Marsh there. And then you go and turn the tables on him and say, okay, well, we got a different direction to go through here, and you're not in the plans. And then we're also going to ship off one of our best players for some allocation money and they didn't get that much in return really for him. And that's sort of one of your heart and soul of your team. I don't know. You're starting to question the ownership, question the coaching on the field. We'll have to see, because they got a big quarterfinal match in CONCACAF Champions League coming up against Vancouver. I think that will let you know a lot. I mean, obviously the teams are in preseason, but it's equal footing. Vancouver's in preseason as well. So, gonna be an interesting couple of legs here for the Red Bulls as far as, let's say they get knocked out. If people are going to start questioning, hey, did we make the right moves here? And I agree with Erik as far as Cincinnati. We got to remember who John Harkes is. Yeah, he brings controversy with him, obviously, but could that power struggle have been of John Harkes using his name to try to get more power in the team? And, Jeff Burton saying, hey, look, I respect everything you did, man, but I don't know that I want to deal with this right now. And, let him go. And sometimes, we aren't there, don't really know what all that stuff's going on there, but that does make you raise an eyebrow a little bit. They did get knocked out unexpectedly there in the playoffs, and that's going to hurt you if you're a coach. But man, they did really well, and then all of a sudden you're going to let them go after 1 year. That seems kind of crazy to me. But
especially with the other surrounding sports in Cincinnati, poke, poke, poke.
Yes,
I mean they should be kind of used to this tremendous success and get knocked out in the playoffs. It's like, isn't that kind of par for the course around those parts?
It's true. So to end our show this evening, we're going to talk about some MLS Team Kits here, of the ones that have been announced, because there's a couple, I think there's 3 or 4 teams that have not announced even a primary kit yet, and we're getting, really close to the start of the season already. So, of the kits that have already dropped, one for me, I really like Atlanta's primary, the red and black with the gold. I think it's beautiful. I think, you're starting out with that it looks very professional as well. It looks very European. I kind of like that whole thing. I like their emblem as well, so that kind of fits in there. But any other ones jump out for you guys?
Well, I looked at all of them, and I have my 3, and I admit part of it being a homer, Orlando City with the deeper purple, little bit of a bolder color, and especially the kind of t-shirt, almost jersey-like, very subtle pattern on their home kit. Very nice touch. And I think another team whose, especially their home kits, are fantastic, but I think could have had another subtle hint of purple, nothing too overwhelming, Minnesota United. Good placement with the Target logo, Target being their sponsor, of course. You got that diagonal stripe, almost like I see on a couple of teams' jerseys in Australia, but the gray going against the bright blue, perfect for me. Fits with their emblem, keeping with their colors like they had in the NASL, but again, maybe a teeny hit of purple right on the outside of that blue slash. Pay homage, pay respect. Just saying, you could have made it work. And my third one, they're calling it the rain jersey because of the weather in Vancouver. a lot of people are probably going to say it looks silly or stupid. I like it. No overwhelming, nothing overpowering, and it's a good little bit of a contrast to the stark white. I can dig it.
With the little triangles on there, too.
Mm-hmm. That represents the rain for their notoriously rainy weather. I like how they did that.
What do you think, Rachael?
I hate to say this, being a Sounders fan, but I really liked FC Dallas's unis. I mean, I like the faded out blue. I think that just looks good. I'm with you. I really like Atlanta United's primaries. I think it just fits, you know. I mean, they're kind of close to the Atlanta Falcons almost. It looks clean. It looks crisp. And I really do like the Galaxies too. I think the Galaxy just released theirs. Possibly, yeah, they just released theirs. I really like their new uniforms as well. I just think they look like they're pretty basic, but I think they look really crisp. I like the dark blue with the white and the yellow and the gold. The gold text.
Yeah, those colors like really just kind of pop at you, and they could be just a really nice T-shirt that you're wearing too. So
Yeah.
I like that. I like the it's kind of it's obviously the Man City colors, and being a Man United fan, it's kind of sacrilegious for me to say, but I can't really hate on the baby blue pretty colors for the NYCFC. It always
I can't,
looks
but
nice.
I'm gonna.
Why? Because it's too much like the Big Brother colors.
Yes. I get it, and they're doing it right, but that color the last couple of years has kind of broken my heart. So it's just like, no. and I got a teeny, go ahead, but I got a teeny bit of a beef to pick with you after this.
Okay, fine. I got Houston. My favorite color is orange, and my second favorite color is white. So them having that combination with the stripe, with the white stripe and the orange, just having the gumption to, from the moment that they started being Houston Dynamo, to go with the orange. I always thought that was great, and I like their colors. And then when they turn it into the white and orange for the other away kit, what they usually do, I always think it looks nice. So that's it for me. What is your bone that you want to pick here?
We talked about this before the show. Why are you hating on the Colorado yellow?
They're ugly. They're ugly.
Okay.
I don't get. Oh, look. I skied in Colorado for 16 years straight, for like about 10 years straight. I mean, I've been to Denver, been to Vail, been to Aspen, been to different parts of Colorado. I don't have a problem with the state or anything like that. Just the flag colors. Just come on, Rachael. Like you gotta agree with me here. They don't look good.
Sorry, Erik, it's ugly.
Okay, go back. Dig deep in the Wayback Machine.
I love their purple and blue or whatever.
But that
just not the flag colors.
But it doesn't. Honestly, when I see Colorado, I never usually associate the avalanche like purple of the darker scheme that even the Colorado Mammoth use or the cross team. I like the colors of the flag, and I think it's a bolder choice for them to use the yellow. Go in the Wayback Machine to the original Colorado Rockies of the NHL. That's where their color scheme came from. That's where they got the colors for the flag. And I think the Rapids are doing this right, yellow included. And I'm even tossing aside my feelings that I discussed as far as Romania. I think this works.
They look like Team Romania. I'm sorry.
And that's not a bad thing. I like Romania's jerseys too. And again, I am not factoring in the fact that one of my old bosses happened to be Romanian and very attractive. Hi, Carmen. But again, completely different. If it looks good, it works. And I think this works.
Fair enough. For one... Yeah, hi, Carvin. Let's, if you listen to this at all. Erik gave you a shout out at the end of the podcast. I mean, I will say I always like the Colorado Rockies colors with the white and the purple. But it is what it is. Hopefully we'll get to talk about the looks like the 3 teams, Columbus, Toronto, and Seattle, that have not released their kits yet next week. But until then, hopefully you've enjoyed our show this evening. Hopefully you will check it out on iTunes, Stitcher, TuneIn Radio, now Last Word on Sports as well. Just wherever you can find us, shoot a subscribe if you liked it. Hit a review if you'd like on your podcatcher of choice as well to let us know what you think. And anything that you'd want to hear us cover. I mean, we already talked about some NWSL, women's national team, men's national team, MLS, of course. Anything else you'd want to see us touch on here when it comes to the American game or CONCACAF, let us know. Until next week, for Rachael, for Erik, and for myself, we will see you guys later.
The following podcast is a W2M Network original production. Visit W2Mnet.com for all of our other great podcasts, plus news, reviews, articles, and opinions from the worlds of wrestling, video games, football, and entertainment.